Imagine discovering you're finally pregnant, then finding your husband's secret phone, your best friend's messages, and a plan to have you declared insane. That's Madison Sterling's congratulations. In the next hour, you'll watch a Manhattan wife become a calculated avenger, a hidden bloodline to a reclusive billionaire, a gala where the screens don't show a donation, they show crimes, and a confession that turns a charity ball into a battleground. But here's the ache under the armor. A baby lost, parents gone, and one letter that asks the question Madison can't outrun. When you burn monsters, how do you keep from becoming one? And just when justice looks clean, a dying witness walks in with the one truth Madison never wanted. Stay to the end for the wiretap, the live takedown, and the final twist that rewrites who really broke her and who she chooses to be next. If this hooked you, tap. Like to boost the story, drop your boldest prediction in the comments, share with a friend who loves twists, and hit subscribe so you don't miss the reveal and the fallout. Madison Sterling stood in the marble bathroom of her Manhattan penthouse, staring at two pink lines that would change everything. Pregnant. After 3 years of trying, she was finally pregnant. Her hands trembled as she set the test on the Italian marble counter, next to Ryan's cologne collection worth more than most people's cars. Ryan, she whispered to herself, imagining telling her husband. Would he finally look at her the way he used to, before the galas and board meetings consumed him? Before she became just another acquisition in his portfolio? The sound of a phone buzzing pulled her from her thoughts. Not her phone. The sound came from Ryan's walk-in closet. Strange, though. He always kept his phone with him, even slept with it, charging on his nightstand like a digital leash to his empire. Madison followed the sound, finding a second iPhone tucked behind his shoe collection. The screen lit up with a message preview that made her blood freeze. Can't wait for tonight, baby. Ryan told his wife he has a client dinner. Same suite as always? The sender's name, Cassandra Wells. Cassandra. Her friend, the woman who'd held her hand through fertility treatments, who'd cried with her over negative tests, who came to dinner every Sunday. Madison's fingers moved out without thought, trying Ryan's usual passcode. It worked. The messages scrolled back months, years, explicit photos, declarations of love, mentions of Madison with cruel laughter. Your barren wife suspects nothing from 3 weeks ago, when Madison had confided her deepest fears to Cassandra over wine. The phone slipped from Madison's numb fingers, clattering on the marble floor. She sank down beside it, one hand protectively over her still flat stomach. The baby Ryan didn't know about. The baby conceived with a man who'd been betraying her for longer than she could process. Maddie, Ryan's voice boomed from the foyer. I'm home early. Thought we could have lunch. Madison grabbed the phone, shoved it back behind the shoes, and stumbled to the sink just as Ryan appeared in the doorway. 6'2" of manufactured perfection. Precisely styled brown hair, gym-sculpted body, smile practicing for photographers who weren't there. You look pale, he observed, not concerned but cataloging, like she was a property showing signs of depreciation. I found something, Madison heard herself say. His expression shifted imperceptibly. Oh? I'm pregnant. For a moment, genuine emotion cracked through his facade. Joy, fear. She couldn't tell before his business face returned. Are you certain? 3 tests. Madison watched him calculate, strategize, plan. Everything was a merger or acquisition to Ryan Blackwood. We'll need to call Dr. Morrison, get you on the best prenatal program. I'll have Sarah at the office research the top specialists. He was already pulling out his primary phone, the one he thought was his only phone. This is perfect timing, actually. The Hong Kong investors will love the family man angle. Ryan, Madison's voice cut through his planning. I know about Cassandra. The silence that followed could have frozen hell. Ryan's thumb hovered over his phone screen, his entire body suddenly still. I don't know what you think you know. I found your other phone. He stepped toward her, and for the first time in their 5-year marriage, Madison felt afraid. Not of violence. Ryan was too calculated for that, but of something colder. You're hormonal, he said smoothly. Pregnancy does things to women's minds, makes them see things that aren't there. I read the messages. What messages? Maddie, you're scaring me. His voice dripped false concern. This paranoia isn't good for the baby. Maybe we should call Dr. Klein, get you something to calm down. Klein, the psychiatrist, Ryan's business partner, had recommended last year when Madison had questioned discrepancies in their joint accounts. Don't, Madison backed away. Don't you dare gaslight me. Ryan's mask finally slipped, revealing something reptilian underneath. Be very careful, Madison. You're carrying my child now, my heir. If you're having delusions, if you're becoming unstable, well, that's something we need to address for the baby's safety. The threat hung between them like a blade. I could have you committed, he continued conversationally. Pregnancy psychosis is more common than people think. The courts are very understanding about protecting unborn children from unstable mothers. Madison's hand went to her stomach. You wouldn't. Wouldn't I? You think you know me so well, but ask yourself, what do you really know about how I built this empire? Sweet, naive Madison with your art history degree and your charity galas. You have no idea what I'm capable of. He straightened his tie. Now you're going to delete whatever you think you saw from your mind. You're going to be my perfect, pregnant wife, and in 9 months you're going to give me my heir. Then we'll discuss your concerns. He left her standing there, shaking in their bathroom that cost more than most homes. Madison slid down the wall, wrapping her arms around her knees, protecting the tiny life inside her from the monster she'd married. But as she sat there, something else began to grow alongside her baby. Not fear, not despair. Rage. Cold, calculated rage that would make Ryan Blackwood's empire look like a child's sandcastle before a hurricane. 3 days later, Madison sat in a corner booth at a diner in Queens, somewhere Ryan's circle would never venture. She'd told him she was at a prenatal yoga class, had even worn the outfit to leave the building. Security cameras would confirm his perfect wife's story. Victoria Cross arrived exactly on time, which somehow didn't surprise Madison. Everything about the woman screamed precision, from her steel gray bomb to her understated but expensive suit. She was the kind of lawyer other lawyers hired when they got divorced. Mrs. Blackwood, Victoria said, sliding into the booth. Sterling, Madison corrected. I never legally changed it. Ryan wanted me to, but small rebellions. Victoria's smile was sharp as a scalpel. Smart, makes things easier. She pulled out a tablet, fingers flying across the screen. Before we begin, I need you to understand something. Your husband has Arthur Finch on retainer. Should that name mean something to me? Finch is what we call a career destroyer. He doesn't just win divorces. He ensures the opposing party never recovers, financially, socially, emotionally. Victoria's eyes met Madison's. I'm better. How do you know I can afford you? You can't, not with the assets Ryan allows you to access. Victoria leaned forward. But I did some digging after your call. Your startup, Canvas, the art authentication platform. Brilliant concept. Strange how Atherton Capital pulled funding at the last second. Madison's breath caught. Bad luck, Ryan said. Ryan orchestrated it. Victoria turned her tablet around, showing a complex web of financial documents. Shell company in the Caymans, payment to Atherton 2 days after they dropped you, traced back to a Blackwood Holdings subsidiary. The diner seemed to spin. Madison gripped the table edge. He sabotaged me? He caged you, classic control pattern. Destroy financial independence, create dependency, maintain power. Victoria's voice softened slightly. I've seen it 100 times. Men like Ryan don't want partners. They want possessions. I can't pay you, Madison said numbly. He controls everything. I'll take the case pro bono. Madison looked up sharply. Why? Because I hate bullies. And because when we destroy him, and we will destroy him, the settlement will more than cover my fees. Victoria pulled out a card. This is a burner phone number, Arno. Call me when you're ready to file. But Madison, once we start, there's no going back. He'll come at you with everything. Madison thought of the pregnancy test hidden in her jewelry box, the only proof Ryan didn't know about yet. Her baby deserved better than a father who saw people as assets. I need to gather evidence first. Victoria nodded approvingly. Smart. Document everything. Record if you can, though New York's two-party consent makes it tricky. Get your important documents somewhere safe. And Madison, be careful. Men like Ryan get dangerous when cornered. That evening, Madison returned home to find Ryan in his study with Jake Morrison, her college friend who'd become a successful venture capitalist. They were laughing over whiskey, the warm light making the scene look like a magazine spread about success. Maddie, Jake stood, hugging her warmly. Ryan told me the news. Congratulations. Madison forced herself to smile, to accept his embrace even as she noticed Ryan watching her like a hawk. Thank you. I didn't know you were coming by my spontaneous visit. You know me. Jake's grin was the same one that had gotten them through all-nighters at Princeton. Actually wanted to talk to you about something. Ryan says you're thinking about getting back into the startup world? Madison's blood chilled. She'd never told Ryan that. Did he? Just mentioned you seemed restless, Ryan interjected smoothly. Thought Jake might have some advice about channels for new mothers. Something small, manageable. The condescension dripped like honey. Madison saw Jake nod along, oblivious to the insult. That's thoughtful, she managed. Jake, could we catch up properly soon? Maybe lunch? Absolutely. He squeezed her shoulder. Take care of yourself, Mads, and that little one. After Jake left, Ryan cornered her in the kitchen. He's worried about you, he said casually. Says you seemed off at Princeton reunion last year. Paranoid. I told him about your episodes. What episodes? The ones we're going to discuss if you don't start playing your role better. His hand landed on her shoulder, possessive rather than comforting. Jake's a good friend. He keeps me informed about your mental state. Has for years, actually. The revelation hit Madison like ice water. Jake. Her friend Jake had been reporting to Ryan for how long? Since college, Ryan answered her unspoken question. I like to know everything about my investments before I make them. You were thoroughly vetted, Madison. Every friend, every relationship, every vulnerability cataloged. How do you think I knew exactly how to win you? Madison pulled away, disgust rising like bile. You're sick. I'm thorough, and now you're carrying my air, so the stakes are even higher. He pulled out his phone, showing her a video. It was from their bedroom, her taking the pregnancy test that morning. Oh yes, I know. Hidden cameras, perfectly legal in my own home. I also have footage of you meeting that lawyer today. Madison's knees nearly buckled. Ryan smiled. Victoria Cross, impressive choice. Unfortunately, she's about to be disbarred for ethics violations. Seems she's been bribing court clerks. Terrible scandal. You're lying. Am I? Check the news tomorrow. He pocketed the phone. This is what you don't understand, Madison. I don't just win because I have money. I win because I plan every move while you're still learning the game exists. That night, Madison lay awake while Ryan slept beside her, his breathing deep and satisfied. Her hand rested on her stomach, feeling the life growing inside her. Her baby, not his heir, hers. She slipped from bed at 3 a.m., padding to the guest bathroom with her laptop. She'd hidden it there, knowing Ryan never entered this room. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, not searching for lawyers or evidence. She was searching for something else entirely. A name she hadn't typed in 15 years. Sebastian Thorne, her grandfather, the tech billionaire who'd built an empire from nothing. The man her mother had run from, changing their names, hiding in suburban anonymity. The man who didn't know Madison existed. Or did he? The psychiatric evaluation papers arrived during the charity gala Madison couldn't skip. Ryan had made sure of that. She stood in an Alexander McQueen gown, champagne flute filled with sparkling water, watching her husband work the room like a conductor leading an orchestra. Every laugh timed, every handshake calculated. Mrs. Blackwood? A server appeared at her elbow, offering an envelope on his silver tray. This was marked urgent. Madison's hand stayed steady as she opened it, though her world tilted at the legal language inside. Petition for psychiatric evaluation. Risk to unborn child. Documented erratic behavior. Darling? Cassandra Wells materialized beside her, concern painted perfectly on her face. The woman who'd been sleeping with Ryan for 2 years touched Madison's arm with counterfeit sympathy. You've gone pale. Just morning sickness, Madison managed, folding the papers back into the envelope. In the evening? Oh, honey, you really aren't well. Cassandra's voice carried just enough to draw attention. Ryan's so worried. We all are. The trap was elegant. Make a scene, prove Ryan's point about instability, stay silent, let the narrative build. Madison chose a third option. You're right, Cassandra. I haven't been well since I found out about you and Ryan. Cassandra's face went white beneath her makeup. I don't know what your Suite 1214 at the Carlisle, Tuesdays and Thursdays. That emerald necklace you're wearing, Ryan bought it last month when he told me he was in Hong Kong. Madison's smile was serene. But you're right, I'm not feeling well. Betrayal has that effect. She walked away, leaving Cassandra frozen, knowing phones were already coming out, recording the aftermath. Let Ryan try to spin that. But he did. By morning, 3 gossip sites ran the same story. Blackwood wife's public breakdown. Friend's fear for unborn child. Cassandra was quoted extensively about Madison's delusions and concerning accusations. Madison's phone rang as she read the headlines. Her parents, Robert and Eleanor Sterling, retired professor and librarian living quietly upstate. Sweetheart, her mother's voice was tight with worry. We saw the news. What's happening? Mom, I can't explain on the phone. Can I come home? Just for a few days? Of course, your room's always ready. Madison packed while Ryan was at the office, taking only basics and the emergency cash she'd hidden over the months. Small bills withdrawn as cash back from groceries, invisible to Ryan's financial surveillance. She was 3 blocks from Penn Station when her phone exploded with calls. Ryan, his assistant, his lawyer, then her mother again. Madison? Eleanor Sterling's voice was wrong, too high, scared. The FBI just left. They're saying you're under investigation for embezzlement, that you stole from Ryan's company. Madison's taxi pulled over as she processed this. Mom, that's not... We know, sweetheart. Your father's calling our lawyer now. We'll figure this out. Don't, Madison said urgently. Don't do anything. Don't call anyone. I think Ryan's watching. The line went dead. Madison tried calling back. Nothing. Her father's phone went straight to voicemail. She abandoned the taxi, ducking into a coffee shop to think. Her laptop showed her parents' social media, last post 3 hours ago. Her mother's silver Honda in the background, the one with the bad brake line her father kept meaning to fix. The news alert came 90 minutes later. Fatal accident on Route 87. Retired couple's car went off cliff. Brake failure suspected. Madison didn't remember screaming, but suddenly baristas were around her, someone calling 911, voices asking if she was in labor. The pain in her chest had nothing to do with her pregnancy. My parents, she gasped. Someone killed my parents. The police who responded were sympathetic but suspicious. The widow of a couple who died just hours after FBI involvement, while under investigation herself? They took her statement, but their eyes said what their voices wouldn't. Unstable. Ryan arrived within the hour, the perfect concerned husband. Officers, thank you for calling me. My wife's been under tremendous stress. The pregnancy, and now this tragedy. He wrapped an arm around Madison as she sat frozen. Her parents were older, the car was ancient. We'd offered to buy them a new one so many times. You did this, Madison whispered. Ryan's grip tightened in warning. She's in shock. Delusions. I have the psychiatric evaluation papers if you need them. The officers exchanged glances. Mental health crisis, clear as day. Madison pulled away. Test the brake lines, please. Test them for tampering. We'll conduct a full investigation, one officer assured her, with the patience reserved for the mentally ill. They wouldn't. Madison saw it in their faces. Elderly couple, old car, tragic accident. Case closed before it opened. Ryan drove her home in silence, but his satisfaction filled the car like cologne. Only when they were in the penthouse did he speak. They were going to help you. I couldn't allow that. Madison lunged at him, nail-seeking eyes, throat, anything. He caught her wrists easily, forcing her against the wall. Careful, stress is bad for the baby. You murdered them. I eliminated interference. There's a difference. He released her, straightening at his tie. Your mother was Eleanor Thorne before she married your nobody father. Did you know that? Daughter of Sebastian Thorne himself. She hid it well, but not well enough. Madison's world tilted. You knew? I've always known. Why do you think I married you? Beauty fades, Madison. But hidden bloodlines, potential inheritance, that's forever. He smiled coldly. Though it seems Grandpa Thorne doesn't know you exist. Mommy did too good a job hiding. Still, genetics or genetics. Our son will have the blood of two empires. I'll never let you near our child. You won't have a choice. Ryan pulled out his phone, showing her a video. See, this is you, screaming in public about your parents being murdered. And here's the police report saying accident. A clearly unstable woman, danger to herself and her child. No judge would let you keep custody. The trap was complete. Every move she'd made had tightened the noose. Madison slid down the wall, hands protectively over her belly. Why? She whispered. If you never loved me, why? Love? Ryan laughed. Love is poor people's luxury. This was business. You were an acquisition with hidden value. The baby is return on investment. Everything else is just noise. He left her there on the floor. Madison stayed motionless until she heard his office door close, then crawled to the bathroom and vomited until nothing remained. Her parents were dead. Her husband was a monster. Her baby. A cramp shot through her abdomen. Then another. When she looked down, she saw blood. No, she gasped, trying to stand. Please, no. The miscarriage happened in custody. Madison had been arrested at her OB/GYN appointment. Ryan's masterstroke of cruelty. He'd planted cocaine in her purse, then called in an anonymous tip about a pregnant woman acting erratically with drugs. Dr. Morrison had tried to intervene, insisting Madison needed medical attention. Not handcuffs. But the drugs were there. The evidence clear. The psychiatric evaluation papers in the system. A danger to her unborn child, the officers said, as they led her away. The cramping started in the police car. By the time they reached the station, Madison was bleeding. She begged for a hospital, screamed for help, but processing took time. Forms needed filing. By hour 3 in the holding cell, it was over. The baby was gone. Madison lay on a metal bench, staring at fluorescent lights that hurt her eyes. Around her, other women gave her space, recognizing grief that transcended their circumstances. A sex worker named Diana held Madison's hand while she sobbed, asking no questions, offering no platitudes, just human contact in hell. Sometimes they take everything, Diana whispered, but they can't take what you become after. The charges were dropped 12 hours later. Ryan's lawyer argued the drugs were clearly planted by Madison herself, attention-seeking behavior from a woman in mental crisis. The miscarriage was unfortunate, but proved she was unfit. Papers were already filed for divorce on grounds of mental instability and drug abuse. Madison walked out of the precinct into rain that matched her emptiness. No money for a taxi. Ryan had frozen all accounts. No phone, confiscated and not returned. She still wore the blood-stained clothes from the arrest. A PR piece was already live. Blackwood files for divorce after wife's drug arrest and pregnancy loss. Comment sections filled with vitriol, gold digger, junkie, baby killer. Ryan painted himself as the grieving father, betrayed by an unstable wife who'd hidden her drug problem. Madison walked for hours, rain washing away tears, but not pain. Her parents were dead. Her baby was gone. Her life destroyed. Every shelter was full. Every friend unreachable or unwilling. Jake Morrison had given a quote about seeing the signs of her instability for years. By midnight, she stood on the Manhattan Bridge, looking at water that promised ending. No more pain, no more fighting a war she'd already lost. The railing was cold under her hands, rain making it slick. One climb, one step, one choice to stop hurting. Hell of a night for a swim. Madison turned. A homeless veteran sat against a pillar, shopping cart beside him, watching her with eyes that had seen too much. Leave me alone. Can't do that. He stood, revealing a prosthetic leg. See, I stood where you're standing. 3 years ago, different bridge, same idea. He limped closer. David Cooper, lost my leg in Afghanistan, family in divorce court, and dignity in a bottle. I don't want your story. Not giving it, just saying I recognize the look, the one that says the bastards won. David pulled out a thermos, offering it. Coffee, terrible but warm. Madison didn't know why she took it. The coffee was indeed terrible, but it was warm and real, and somehow that mattered. They don't win if you're still breathing, David said. That's what someone told me that night. Passed it on dozen times since. Your turn to hear it. You don't understand what he took from me. Husband? At Madison's nod, David snorted. They're good at that. Taking. Mine got the house, kids, even my dog. But here's the thing, she didn't get my tomorrow. Every sunrise I see is one she didn't steal. They sat in silence, sharing terrible coffee while rain became drizzle. Madison told him everything, words pouring out to this stranger who had no reason to judge or betray. Her parents, her baby, Ryan's systematic destruction. David listened, then pulled out an ancient flip phone. What are you doing? Calling in a debt. He dialed from memory. Someone once helped me when I had nothing left. Time to pay it forward. The phone rang twice before a voice answered that Madison recognized from financial news channels, from magazine covers, from her mother's hidden photographs. Mr. Thorne, it's David Cooper. Yes, sir, from the Seattle situation. I have your granddaughter here. Yes, sir, Madison. She needs you. Madison's world stopped. You know my grandfather? David smiled. I did security for Thorne Industries before the war. After I got back, hit bottom, Mr. Thorne personally pulled me out, set me up with doctors, therapy, place to live. I screwed it up, ended here, but he said, if I ever found you, call. He knew about me? Your mom wrote him before she died, told him everything. He's been waiting, respecting her wishes to stay away unless you needed him. The phone was offered. Madison took it with shaking hands. Madison? The voice was old but powerful, carrying an authority that made Ryan's power seem like a child's tantrum. I'm sorry about Eleanor, about everything. I don't know what to say. Say you'll let me help. Say you'll come home. Home. The word broke something in Madison. She sobbed, holding the phone like a lifeline while a grandfather she'd never met promised things would be okay, that Ryan Blackwood would pay, that her parents would be avenged. There's a car coming, Sebastian Thorne said. David will stay with you. And Madison, your mother would be proud of how hard you fought. The black town car arrived 20 minutes later, looking alien in the dawn light among the bridge's shadows. The driver didn't blink at Madison's appearance or David's shopping cart. Both were helped in with equal respect. As they drove toward whatever came next, Madison looked back at the bridge. David was right. Every sunrise Ryan didn't steal was a victory. She was still breathing. The war wasn't over. Sebastian Thorne's office occupied the entire top floor of a building that looked like it was designed by someone who'd weaponized minimalism. Everything was clean lines and hidden power, from the reception desk that cost more than most cars to the art that museums would kill for. Madison stood before him, this grandfather she'd never known, seeing her mother's eyes in his weathered face. He was 71, but carried himself like someone who could buy or destroy anything in his path. You look like her, he said finally. Eleanor. Same determination in the jaw. She never spoke of you. I earned that. Sebastian moved to the window, Manhattan spread below like a conquest map. I was building empires while she was building a life. I chose wrong. By the time I understood that, she'd hidden you both so well that even I couldn't find you. But David found me, not the other way around. After his service, I hire veterans when I can. David's job was never official, but he kept eyes out. Your mother reached out just once, before she died. Cancer, she said. Wanted me to know you existed, but made me promise to stay away unless you needed me. Madison felt tears she thought had run dry. She had cancer? Didn't want you to know. Said you had enough pain with Ryan. Sebastian's jaw tightened. I researched him thoroughly after that. Every crime, every mistress, every destroyed life in his wake. I could have ended him then. Why didn't you? Eleanor asked me not to. Said you had to find your own strength first. He turned back to her. She was right. If I'd intervened then, you'd have been saved but not strong. Now you're steel wrapped in silk. I'm broken. You're forged. There's a difference. Sebastian sat behind his desk, suddenly all business. Ryan Blackwood destroyed my daughter's child, killed her parents, took her baby. What would you like done about it? The question hung there. Permission for anything. Revenge, destruction, maybe even death. Madison felt the dark temptation of that power. I want him to know what it feels like, she said slowly. To lose everything, but legally, publicly. I want his empire in ruins, and his name synonymous with a failure. Sebastian smiled, sharp as winter. Now you sound like a thorn. But first you need to prove you deserve that name. Madison's stomach dropped. Prove? Power isn't inherited, it's earned, even for blood. He stood. You'll work here, starting tomorrow. Janitor, night shift, minimum wage. You're joking. I never joke about power. You'll clean offices, including mine. You'll learn this company from the ground up. And you'll prove you're not just another victim looking for rescue. Madison felt rage rise. My parents are dead. My baby is gone. And you want me to prove myself? Yes, his voice was granite. Because if you can't rebuild yourself, you can't destroy him. Ryan Blackwood thinks you're finished. Let him. While he celebrates, you'll be here, becoming something he never imagined. And if I refuse? Then I'll give you a check for $10 million and you'll never hear from me again. Sebastian pulled out a checkbook, pen poised. Enough to disappear, start over, live comfortably. Your choice. Madison looked at the check, then at this stranger who shared her blood. The easy path versus the hard one. Rescue versus revenge. What time does the night shift start? Sebastian's smile was the first warm thing she'd seen from him. 10 p.m., David will show you where to get uniforms. If for 3 weeks Madison cleaned toilets and emptied trash in the building that bore her grandfather's name. She wore the uniform with her maiden name, Sterling, stitched on it. She pushed carts through halls where executives worth millions never saw her face. But she listened. God, did she listen. Mergers discussed by coffee machines, affairs whispered by water coolers. The entire corporate world's secrets dropped like breadcrumbs for someone invisible enough to collect them. She learned that Blackwood Holdings was trying to acquire a Thorne subsidiary, that Ryan was leveraging everything for this deal, seeing it as his graduation from millionaire to billionaire status. She was cleaning Sebastian's office when she found them. Photographs in an unlocked drawer, like he'd wanted her to find them. Her mother through the years. Eleanor as a child, teenager, young woman. And one Madison had never seen. Her parents' wedding, with Sebastian in the background, watching from a distance. He'd been there, always there, honoring Eleanor's wish for distance while never stopping his vigil. Under the photos were files. Everything on Ryan. Not just the affairs and financial crimes, but darker things. The suspicious death of his first business partner, the assistant who disappeared after threatening to expose him, the trail of destroyed lives that preceded Madison. But the last file made her blood freeze. Her parents' accident. Photos from the scene. The brake line had been cut. Clear sabotage. But the police report said mechanical failure. A payment trail led from Ryan to the investigating arsenal. I could have prevented it. Madison spun. Sebastian stood in the doorway, looking older than his years. What? Your parents. I had people watching once Eleanor reached out. They reported concerns about Ryan's escalation. I could have acted. He entered, sitting heavily in his chair. I chose to wait, thinking I had time. I was wrong. Madison felt rage unlike anything before. You let them die? I failed to save them. There's a difference, but not much of one. Sebastian met her eyes. I've failed many people by choosing strategy over action. Your mother, your parents, you. Why tell me this? Because you deserve truth, and because you need to understand something. Power means nothing if you don't use it when it matters. I learned too late. You don't have to. Madison set down the files. Ryan's trying to acquire Thornpoint Analytics. I know. Let him think he's succeeding, draw him in, then destroy him when he's over-leveraged. Sebastian leaned back. That would work, but it's my plan, not yours. What's your plan? Madison thought of Diana from the holding cell, of David on the bridge, of her parents who died trying to help her. His gala, the Blackwood Foundation annual event. It's in 2 weeks. Everyone who matters will be there. Press, investors, Board members. She picked up Ryan's file. We expose everything. Live publicly, no legal maneuvers or backroom deals. Just truth, undeniable and witnessed. He'll have security, legal protection. Not against his wife. Madison smiled coldly. We're still married. I have access, legal standing, and every right to attend. You'd need evidence even he can't deny. Then we'd better create some. Starting with Cassandra Wells. Sebastian studied her for a long moment. You're not the broken woman who stood here 3 weeks ago. No, Madison agreed. That woman died with her baby. I'm what rose from those ashes. Then you don't need to clean toilets anymore. He pushed a key card across the desk. Executive suite, 42nd floor. Your mother's office. I kept it exactly as she would have wanted. Madison took the key, feeling its weight. This isn't charity? This is war. And you just proved you're a general, not a foot soldier. Cassandra Wells lived in a lifestyle funded by other women's husbands. A penthouse in Tribeca decorated in what Madison privately called Mistress Moderne. Everything cream and gold. Expensive, but soulless, like the woman herself. Madison stood at the door, dressed in designer clothes that belonged to her old life, wearing the face of the broken wife. The doorman had let her up without question. She was still Mrs. Blackwood, after all. Madison? Cassandra answered in silk pajamas at 2 p.m., wine glass already in hand. What are you doing here? I need to talk to someone who understands Ryan. Cassandra's eyes narrowed, then softened with false sympathy. Oh, honey, I heard about the baby. I'm so sorry. The words were acid on Madison's raw wounds, but she played her part. Can I come in? Cassandra stepped aside, predator inviting prey. They sat on the cream couch that probably had Ryan's DNA embedded in its fibers. He's divorcing me, Madison said, letting tears fall. They were real. Tears of rage, not sorrow. I know. He told me. Cassandra didn't even pretend surprise. It's for the best, Madison. You two were never really suited. How long? What? How long have you been sleeping with my husband? Cassandra sipped her wine, calculating. Does it matter? I just need to know how blind I was. 3 years. The admission came with satisfaction. He needed someone who understood his world. You were sweet, but sweetness doesn't build empires. Madison pulled out her phone, noting Cassandra's tension. Did he ever talk about his first partner, Marcus Anderson? Why? Just curious about the man I married. Cassandra relaxed. Marcus was weak. Tried to expose some regulatory shortcuts Ryan took. Ryan handled it. Handled it how? Wine made Cassandra loose. Cruel. Marcus had a boat accident. Tragic. But that's what happens when you threaten someone like Ryan. Madison kept recording, phone hidden in her purse. And his assistant, Jennifer? Jennifer thought she could blackmail him over some offshore accounts. She disappeared, probably living under a new name somewhere tropical. Cassandra laughed. Ryan takes care of problems permanently. Like my parents? Cassandra froze. I don't know what you mean. He told me everything, Cassandra, how he had their brakes cut, how he paid off the cops. Madison let desperation enter her voice. I just need to know if you knew. If everyone knew but me. He said it was necessary. You were becoming a liability. The pregnancy made you unstable, and your parents would have interfered. Cassandra set down her wine. It was business. Murder was business? Everything's business to Ryan. You should have learned that. Cassandra stood. You should go. He wouldn't like you being here. Madison stood too, recording still running. One more thing. The FBI approached me about testifying, about everything. Cassandra went white. You wouldn't. Why not? I have nothing left to lose. Because Ryan would kill you. Simple. Factual. Not metaphorically, actually kill you. He has people for that. Then I guess I'd better kill him first. She left Cassandra standing there, mouth open, wine glass forgotten. In the elevator, Madison sent the recording to 3 places: Sebastian's lawyer, the FBI field office, and a draft email set to send unless she logged in every 12 hours. Insurance policy complete. The Blackwood Foundation Gala was held at the Museum of Natural History among the dinosaurs. Fitting, Madison thought, for creatures about to become extinct. She arrived in a black gown that cost nothing, borrowed from her mother's office closet, vintage Valentino that Eleanor had worn to some Thorn Company event decades ago. Her wedding ring was gone, replaced by her grandmother's pearl necklace that Sebastian had kept. Security tried to stop her at the door, but no. Ryan's orders, but Madison had brought Victoria Cross, reinstated after the false charges mysteriously dissolved. Mrs. Blackwood is still legally married and entitled to attend, Victoria told them. Unless Mr. Blackwood wants a scene, they were admitted. The Great Hall was packed with everyone who mattered in New York finance. Ryan held court near the T-Rex skeleton, appropriate for a predator. He saw Madison and his face went through several expressions: rage, calculation, decision. He approached with his typical confidence. Madison, you shouldn't be here. Our last public event as a married couple. I wouldn't miss it. Security will escort you out. Actually, they won't. Madison smiled. See, I've been talking to the FBI about Marcus Anderson, about Jennifer Walsh, about my parents. Ryan grabbed her arm. You're delusional. Cassandra doesn't think so. She was very chatty about your methods. I have recordings. Madison pulled free. But that's not why I'm here. Then why? To watch you fall. The lights dimmed for the presentation. Ryan was scheduled to announce his acquisition of Thornpoint Analytics, the crown jewel that would elevate him to the truly elite. He climbed the stage, confidence restored. Madison was one woman with accusations. He was Ryan Blackwood. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, his voice carrying across the hall. Tonight marks a historic moment for Blackwood Holdings. We are pleased to announce the screens behind him changed, not to his presentation, but to evidence. Financial records, offshore accounts, the cut break line photos, the recording of Cassandra admitting to murders. Ryan spun, seeing his crimes displayed in 40-foot projections. What is this? He demanded. Madison stood, her voice carrying. The truth. The room erupted. Phones came out, recording everything. The evidence kept cycling. Payment to the cop who'd covered up her parents' murder, emails about destroying her company, photos of him with Cassandra dated during Madison's fertility treatments. This is fake, Ryan shouted. This is my mentally ill wife. Actually, Vita's voice boomed from the back. It's quite real. Sebastian Thorne entered, flanked by FBI agents. At 71, he commanded the room like gravity itself. Mr. Blackwood, I'm Agent Sarah Cole, one agent announced. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, financial fraud, and racketeering. This is impossible. Ryan looked wildly around. I own judges. I own cops. You own nothing, Sebastian said quietly. Thornpoint Analytics was never for sale. It was bait. And you leveraged everything to bite. The FBI led Ryan away as he screamed about lawyers, about connections, about power. The room watched in stunned silence as the golden boy of real estate was perp-walked through his own gala. Madison stood there feeling nothing. No satisfaction, no joy, just empty completion. Mrs. Blackwood, a reporter shoved a microphone at her. How does it feel to see your husband arrested? Sterling, madam, Madison corrected. My name is Madison Sterling, and I feel like I can finally breathe. The FBI field office was a maze of cubicles and fluorescent lights that made everyone look guilty. Madison sat in an interview room, Victoria Cross beside her, as Agent Sarah Cole laid out evidence that made even Madison's extensive documentation look amateur. Cassandra Wells flipped immediately, Cole said, sliding photos across the table. Full cooperation in exchange for immunity. She's provided recordings going back 4 years. Madison looked at images of Cassandra wearing a wire, meeting with Ryan in hotels, restaurants, even their penthouse when Madison was traveling. She was never just a mistress, Cole continued. She was feeding information to a competitor, using Ryan while selling his secrets. She played you both. The revelation should have mattered, but Madison felt only numbness. Is she in protection? Witness security, yes. Ryan has resources we're still uncovering. Contract killers on retainer, judges in his pocket. Your recordings gave us probable cause, but Cassandra gave us the whole network. She won't testify at trial, Victoria interrupted. She'll disappear before then. Cole nodded grimly. Probably, but we have enough without him. Your husband was meticulous about documentation. He never thought anyone would have access to his personal servers. How did you... Your grandfather. Apparently, Mr. Thorne has capabilities we don't ask about. Through the window, Madison could see into another interview room. Ryan sat there, his perfect suit wrinkled, his perfect hair mussed, his perfect world destroyed. He was screaming at his lawyer, not Arthur Finch, who'd abandoned him immediately, but some court-appointed attorney who looked overwhelmed. He killed my parents, Madison said quietly. Will he pay for that? The brake line evidence is circumstantial without the officer who covered it up, and he died 6 months ago. Heart attack. Cole's expression suggested she didn't believe in the coincidence. But the financial crimes alone will put him away for 30 years. The attempted murder charges for Marcus Anderson might stick. Jennifer Walsh, we haven't found a body. So he wins. Even now, he wins. He's destroyed Mrs. Sterling. His assets are frozen. His company's in receivership. His name is poison. Everyone who ever associated with him is distancing themselves. That's not winning. But it didn't feel like losing either. Not really. Ryan had taken her parents, her baby, her innocence about the world. She'd taken his empire, his freedom, his future. The scales didn't balance. Madison left the FBI office to find Sebastian waiting in his Bentley. You did well, he said as they drove through Manhattan traffic. Did I? I feel nothing. Revenge is like that, anticlimactic. The dead don't rise, the pain doesn't end. You just have confirmation that justice occasionally exists. They rode in silence until Sebastian spoke again. There's something else. Something I didn't tell you about your mother. Madison tensed. What? She left you something, in her will. I've been holding it per her instructions, and to give you only after Ryan was dealt with. He handed her a safety deposit box key. Chase Bank, Madison Avenue Branch. Box 1847. Madison went alone. The box contained 3 things: a letter, a USB drive, and a photograph of her mother holding infant Madison, both laughing in sunlight that seemed impossible now. The letter was dated a month before her parents died. My darling Madison, if you're reading this, then your father and I are gone, and you've finally broken free from Ryan. I knew what he was long before you saw it. A mother sees these things, but you had to discover your own strength, not have it handed to you. The USB contains everything. My correspondence with Dad, he never stopped watching over us. Evidence of Ryan's crimes I gathered myself, and something else. Footage from hidden cameras I placed in your penthouse. I'm sorry for violating your privacy, but I needed proof of what he was doing to you. You'll find video of Ryan admitting to planning our murders. He didn't know I was sick anyway. Didn't know he was just speeding up the inevitable. Your father and I discussed it. We could have run, hidden, but that would have left you trapped forever. So we stayed. We let him come. We died so you could live. Don't mourn us, darling. We lived full lives, loved completely, and our greatest achievement was you. Not the you Ryan tried to create, but the you that survived him. Build something beautiful from these ashes. All my love, Mom. Madison sat in that sterile bank cubicle and sobbed until she couldn't breathe. Her parents had known. They'd sacrificed themselves to give her evidence, to ensure Ryan would pay. The USB confirmed everything. Video of Ryan with his cleaner, planning the accident. Audio of him laughing about Madison's miscarriage being convenient. Evidence that would upgrade charges from conspiracy to premeditated murder. But there was more. Financial records showing Ryan had been systematically poisoning Madison. Small doses of mercury in her prenatal vitamins, enough to cause miscarriage but not death. He'd never wanted the baby. He'd wanted her broken, dependent, institutionalized. Madison threw up in the bank's bathroom, heaving until her ribs ached. Every tender moment, every fake concern about her pregnancy had been performance while he poisoned their child. She brought everything to Agent Cole, who went pale reviewing it. This changes everything. This is first-degree murder, multiple counts. He'll never see freedom again. But that night, as Madison sat in her mother's office at Thorne Industries, she realized something. Ryan in prison wasn't enough. He still had loyalists, still had hidden resources, still had the ability to hurt people from behind bars. She thought of Diana from the holding cell, of David on the bridge, of everyone Ryan had destroyed before her. "What if we don't stop at him?" she asked Sebastian over dinner. "What do you mean?" Ryan was a symptom, the whole system that enabled him, the corrupt cops, the blind eye board members, the lawyers who helped hide bodies, they're still out there. Sebastian smiled slowly. "You want to burn it all down?" "I want to build something better. A foundation, maybe, for victims of people like Ryan. Legal support, safe houses, investigation resources." "The Canvas Foundation?" Madison shook her head. "That was my old dream. This is bigger. The Phoenix Foundation, for people rising from ashes." "I'll fund it." "No." Madison pushed her proposal across the table. "I'll fund it, with the money from Ryan's liquidated assets. Every penny he stole, every dollar he made from others' pain, goes to stopping the next Ryan Blackwood." Sebastian read her proposal, his expression shifting from skepticism to pride. "This is war on an entire system." "Good. Systems should fear the people they fail." 6 months later, Madison sat in a courtroom that felt like a coliseum. Ryan Blackwood's trial had become the most watched legal proceeding since O.J. Simpson. Court TV had dedicated coverage. True crime podcasts released daily episodes. The gallery was packed with reporters, victims, and vultures hoping to witness the fall of a king. Ryan entered in an orange jumpsuit, the costume of his new reality. He'd lost weight, his perfect gym body now just thin. His hair, without products and stylists, revealed gray he'd hidden for years. But his eyes still held that reptilian calculation, scanning the room for advantage. He found Madison in the front row and smiled. Not defeated, waiting. The prosecutor, Janet Williams, was Sebastian's recommendation, a woman who'd spent 20 years putting away men who thought money made them immortal. "The state will show," she began, "that Ryan Blackwood built an empire on graves, that he murdered competitors, witnesses, and ultimately his own in-laws, that he systematically poisoned his pregnant wife, causing the death of their unborn child, that he is not a businessman who bent rules but a serial killer who wore Italian suits." The defense attorney, paid for by liquidating Ryan's last hidden account, tried to paint Madison as the architect of an elaborate revenge plot, a spurned woman with a billionaire grandfather creating evidence. Then came the witnesses. Diana, the sex worker from Holding, testified about Madison's grief. She wasn't some rich lady playing victim. She was broken, lost her baby in that cell while begging for help. David Cooper testified about the bridge. She was gonna jump, no doubt. The woman I pulled back had nothing left. But the most damaging testimony came from an unexpected source, Jake Morrison. Madison hadn't known he'd been subpoenaed. Their college friendship felt like another lifetime. He took the stand looking haunted. "Mr. Morrison," the prosecutor began, "how long have you known the defendant?" 15 years. "And you were friends?" "I thought so." Jake's voice was hollow. "I was wrong." Jake testified about Ryan hiring him in college to befriend Madison, about reporting on her mental state for years, about the night Ryan showed him photos of Madison's parents' bodies before the police arrived. He had pictures on his phone, called them insurance, said it was important to document everything in case Madison became difficult. How did he have photos before the police? Because he was there. He watched them die. The courtroom erupted. Ryan's lawyer objected frantically, but Jake continued. "I've been in therapy since Madison's parents died. I can't sleep, can't eat. I helped him cage her. I'm complicit in everything." His testimony destroyed any remaining doubt. The jury saw not just a murderer, but a monster who would turn friends into weapons. Madison testified last, 3 days on the stand, recounting 5 years of marriage that had been psychological warfare. She brought the poison prenatal vitamins, had an expert explain how mercury caused her miscarriage. She played audio of Ryan laughing about her parents' deaths. "He didn't just kill them," she said, voice steady despite tears. "He made me think I was crazy for suspecting, made me doubt reality itself." That's what he did. He didn't just commit crimes, he made victims complicit in their own destruction. Ryan watched her with those cold eyes, occasionally smiling as if enjoying a private joke. Cross-examination was brutal. The defense attorney, doing his job despite knowing his client's guilt, attacked every aspect of Madison's story. Isn't it true you're Sebastian Thorne's granddaughter? Yes. And isn't it true you hid this fact from your husband? My mother hid it from everyone. I didn't know myself until recently. Convenient, just like all this evidence appearing after you connected with a billionaire grandfather. Madison met the lawyer's eyes. What's convenient is that my husband documented his crimes because he never thought anyone would have the power to expose them. Or you created evidence with unlimited resources. Then why did Cassandra Wells corroborate everything? Why did Jake Morrison testify against his friend? Why do financial records going back years support every claim? Madison leaned forward. You know he's guilty. Everyone in this room knows it. The only question is whether the system that protected him for so long will protect him again. It wouldn't. The jury deliberated for 6 hours, 5 of which were reportedly spent reviewing the sheer volume of evidence. 1 hour on the verdict itself. Guilty on all counts. Murder in the first degree for Robert and Eleanor Sterling. Manslaughter for the unborn child. Conspiracy, fraud, racketeering. The list went on for 20 minutes. Ryan stood for sentencing, finally looking at Madison with something like respect. Life without parole, the judge announced. Consecutive sentences totaling 300 years. As they led Ryan away, he stopped beside Madison. You became me, he whispered. You became exactly what you hated. Ruthless, calculating, using people as weapons. I'm proud of you. Madison felt bile rise but kept her face neutral. No, Ryan, I became what was necessary to stop you. The difference is, I'll use that power to prevent the next you. He laughed as they dragged him away. There's always a next me, and now there's a next you too. You'll see. Power corrupts everyone, even grieving widows with good intentions. 3 years passed. Madison built the Phoenix Foundation into something unprecedented, a combination of legal aid, private investigation, and witness protection for victims of powerful predators. The old Blackwood Holdings building became their headquarters, his empire repurposed for redemption. She never remarried, never dated. Trust was a luxury she couldn't afford. Her life was the foundation, 14-hour days of reading cases, approving funding, testifying before Congress about systemic abuse. The women they helped called her a hero. The men they destroyed called her a vigilante. Madison called herself tired. On the anniversary of her parents' deaths, she always visited their graves. This year, Sebastian came with her. He was 74 now, moving slower but still commanding. Your mother would be proud, he said, placing flowers on Eleanor's headstone. Would she? I destroyed a man using his own tactics. I became cruel to fight cruelty. You became effective. There's a difference. They stood in comfortable silence until Sebastian spoke again. I'm dying. Madison turned sharply. What? Pancreatic cancer. 6 months, maybe 8. He said it calmly, like discussing stock prices. Everything goes to you. The company, the fortune, the responsibility. I don't want it. Neither did your mother. But wants and needs rarely align. He touched Eleanor's headstone. She ran from power because she saw what it did to me. You ran toward it because you saw what happened without it. And look what I became. You became necessary. Sebastian pulled out an envelope. This came to the foundation. I intercepted it. It was from Ryan, his prison handwriting, spun still disgustingly perfect. Madison, congratulations on your empire. The foundation is impressive. You've saved 43 women from men like me. You've destroyed 16 careers, sent 9 to prison. But here's what you don't see. You've also created 17 wrongful accusations, destroyed 3 innocent men because traumatized women saw their abusers everywhere. Your foundation's investigators planted evidence in the Garrett case. I know because the investigator is in the cell next to mine now. You've become the monster you fought, just with better PR. Your parents died for nothing. You saved some people by destroying others. The scales never balance, do they? By the time you read this, I'll be gone. Terminal liver cancer, seems poisoning runs in the family. But I wanted you to know I won. I made Madison Sterling disappear and created something harder, crueler, more effective. You're not my victim anymore. You're my successor. Tell our child I'm sorry. If they'd lived, maybe we'd both be different. Forever yours, Ryan. Madison's hands shook. She wanted to tear the letter up, Burn it, pretend it never existed. But the postmark was from 3 days ago. Ryan was already dead. The Garrett case, she said numbly. We were so sure. You were wrong, Sebastian confirmed. The man killed himself last month. His suicide note maintained innocence. Madison sank to her knees between her parents' graves. Everything she'd built, every life she'd saved, was it worth the innocent ones destroyed? Had she become what Ryan said? Him with better intentions? This is what power does, Sebastian said gently. It makes you God and devil simultaneously. Every choice saves someone and damns another. Then I don't want it. Too late. You have it. The question is what you do next. Madison looked at the letter again. Ryan's final manipulation making her doubt everything, even from the grave. But then she thought of the women sleeping safely tonight because of the foundation. The children who still had mothers, the victims who'd found justice. We need better verification procedures, she said, standing. Independent review boards. Multiple confirmation sources before action. That will slow everything down. Some victims won't get help in time. And some innocent people won't be destroyed. Madison folded Ryan's letter carefully. He was wrong about one thing. I'm not his successor. I'm what happens when someone like him creates someone like me. I'm consequence personified. Sebastian smiled sadly. Your mother said something similar once, right before she ran from all of it. I'm not running. No, you're evolving. The text came at 2 a.m., 5 years after Ryan's death. Your grandfather is gone. Madison arrived at the hospital to find Sebastian had already been moved to the morgue. Efficient to the end, he'd left instructions, no funeral, no memorial, just cremation and scattering in the ocean near where he'd built his first company. She was alone with his body for a moment. This grandfather she'd known for only 8 years, but who'd changed everything. Thank you, she whispered, for waiting, for helping, for understanding what I had to become. The lawyers handled everything. The Thorne Empire, worth $60 billion, transferred to Madison Sterling. She was now one of the richest women in America, powerful enough to destroy anyone. The thought terrified her. She returned to the foundation to find chaos. The Garrett family was suing for wrongful death. 3 more cases had been flagged as potentially falsified. The investigator Ryan mentioned had indeed been arrested for evidence tampering. Victoria Cross was waiting in Madison's office. We need to talk. About Garrett? About everything. Victoria closed the door. The foundation is imploding. You push too hard, too fast. In trying to catch every Ryan Blackwood, you're creating collateral damage. So we stop? Let predators walk free? We evolve, like you said. Victoria pulled out a restructuring plan. Less vigilante justice, more systemic change. Use Thorne's money to lobby for legal reform. Fund law schools to train prosecutors. Create safe houses that don't require destroying the accused first. It was safer, slower, less satisfying than destruction. It was also right. Madison spent the next year restructuring everything. The Phoenix Foundation became less weapon, more shield. They saved fewer people but destroyed fewer innocents. The balance felt like defeat some days, victory on others. She was reviewing cases when her assistant knocked. Miss Sterling, there's a woman here, says she has information about Ryan Blackwood you need to hear. Madison tensed. Ryan had been dead for 2 years. What more could surface? The woman who entered looked familiar but changed. Cassandra Wells had aged badly in witness protection, the wine and guilt wearing her into someone Madison barely recognized. Hello, Madison. You're supposed to be in protection. I left. Couldn't live with it anymore. Cassandra sat uninvited, hands shaking. I need to tell you something. About your baby. Madison's chest tightened. What about my baby? Ryan didn't poison you. The room spun. The mercury was in the vitamins, yes, but Ryan didn't put it there. Cassandra pulled out a phone, showed Madison old texts. I did. Madison couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only stare at this woman confessing to murdering her child. Why me? The word came out broken. Because I wanted him. Wanted the life you had. If you had his baby, he'd never leave. Cassandra was crying now, ugly tears that meant nothing. I'm so sorry. I just wanted what you had. You killed my baby because you wanted my husband? I didn't mean for you to lose it, just to miscarry early, make Ryan think you couldn't have children. I didn't know about the arrest, the stress. It all went wrong. Madison stood slowly, walked to her desk, picked up a crystal paperweight that could crush a skull. I came to confess, Cassandra said quickly. I have terminal brain cancer. 3 months to live. I wanted to clear my conscience. Your conscience? Madison laughed, harsh and bitter. You murdered my child and want absolution? I want you to know Ryan didn't do everything. Some of it was me. Some was Jake. Some was the system itself. You've been fighting the wrong war. Madison set down the paperweight, decision made. Get out. Don't you want me arrested? Punished? You're dying in 3 months. That's not justice. That's mercy I don't have the right to grant. Madison opened the door. Leave. Die knowing what you did. That's your punishment. Quick, Cassandra left, and Madison collapsed at her desk. Everything she thought she knew was wrong. Ryan was a monster, but not the only one. She'd been surrounded by them, married to one, befriended by others. The phone rang, another victim needing help, another predator to stop, another choice between justice and revenge. Madison answered, because that's what she did now. She answered when others couldn't. She fought because she'd learned how. She survived because the alternative was letting them win. Looking out at the Manhattan skyline, she thought of her parents, her baby, even Ryan. All ghosts now haunting her choices. She wasn't the hero of this story. Neither was she the villain. She was what happened when someone was pushed too far and given too much power to push back. She was consequence and catalyst, salvation and damnation. She was Madison Sterling, granddaughter of Sebastian Thorne, survivor of Ryan Blackwood, mother to a child who never breathed. And tomorrow someone would call needing help, and she would answer. Because that's what phoenixes do. They rise again and again, no matter how many times they burn. The intercom buzzed. Ms. Sterling, there's a young woman here. Says her husband is trying to have her committed. She has nowhere else to go. Madison stood, smoothing her dress, preparing for another war. Send her in. The cycle continued. It always would. But today, someone would be saved. Someone's story wouldn't end on a bridge or in a cell. That had to be enough. It was all she had left to give, 5 years later. The letter arrived on a Tuesday, slipped under Madison's office door despite security that could stop anyone. Dear Ms. Sterling, you don't know me, but you saved my life. I was the woman who came to you 5 years ago, the one whose husband was trying to have committed. You helped me escape, rebuild, survive. I'm writing because I'm pregnant now. Married to a good man who knows my story and loves me anyway. We're having a daughter. We're naming her Madison. I wanted you to know that your pain created something beautiful. Your loss saved others. Your story, as brutal as it was, gave me strength to tell mine. Ryan Blackwood was wrong. You're not his successor. You're the antibody the world created to fight the infection he represented. Thank you for becoming what you became, even though it cost you everything. Thank you for answering when I called. Forever grateful, Sarah P.S. I volunteer at the foundation now. Yesterday, I held a woman's hand while she cried about losing her baby to her husband's abuse. I told her about you. She stopped crying and started planning. The cycle continues, but differently now, better. Madison read the letter 3 times, then placed it in the drawer where she kept photos of her parents, the ultrasound of her lost baby, and other proof that beauty could grow from ashes. Outside, Manhattan pulsed with life, predators and prey, victims and survivors, all churning in the endless urban dance.